Hey, sweet friend, and welcome back to Migraine Relief Hotline. I'm Kelli, the migraine dietitian, and each week I'll be answering your biggest questions about migraine so you can feel more confident and in control. Now, before we dive into today's question, I have to ask you a question. So, I have been puzzling for maybe a year now, really into puzzles. And at this point, I have a lot of puzzles. Like, we had to buy another shelf for all the puzzles. What do you do with your puzzles? Because I know some of you are also avid puzzlers. So what do you do with them? Do you trade them with other people? Do you keep them forever? Do you donate them? Do you sell them? I don't know. Because it's becoming a problem. It's becoming a problem. And I'm not going to redo the puzzle. I mean, I might in like a few years if I keep them for that long, but I like to do a new one each time. So I need to know. I need you to tell me, what do I do with the like dozens of puzzles that I have built up at this point? I need help. All right, enough puzzle talk. Let's get into today's question all about abdominal migraine. A quick note before we get started. I am a dietitian, but I am not your dietitian. All of the information in this podcast is intended to be educational only, and it is not a substitute for medical advice. Please make sure to check with your personal healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. Okay, so today's question comes from Anonymous, and they wanted help with abdominal migraine. So this is their question. Hi, Kelli. Hello. I was wondering if you've ever come across abdominal migraine. These are more common in children and teens who often go on to develop more classic migraine as they get older. Yep. But adults get them too. I'm in my 20s and get both abdominal migraine and classic migraine. I don't hear a lot about abdominal migraine, so I would love to know if you have had any clients with them and if you know of much research around treating them. Okay, this is a really good question, and I'm excited we've already had someone submit this because abdominal migraine is a very real thing that most people have never heard about, right? And it is more common in younger people, kids and teens. And it's thought that typically we grow out of it if we have it and go on to usually develop normal migraine, right? But it can happen in adults, and regardless of how old you are when the onset of abdominal migraine occurs, it's very frequently missed by doctors and healthcare professionals because it mimics so many other conditions. So let's dig into a little bit more about what abdominal migraine is, who it happens in, what the symptoms are, and then some things that we can think about when it comes to treatment. So abdominal migraine is a type of migraine, but the predominant symptom is going to be stomach pain instead of head pain or other symptoms. Some of those other symptoms are going to be nausea, vomiting, that stomach pain around the midline of your stomach, kind of in the middle, around your belly button area, and then no other clear GI diagnoses. So you've been worked up, you've had all the things done, and you still have this weird pain that comes and goes. Now, these abdominal migraine attacks mimic migraine attacks where they'll come and go, and they typically last between like 2 and 72 hours at a time. And just like other types of migraine, some people can experience clusters of episodes for days, weeks, months at a time. You can then go into remission for a period of time and then the cycle starts over again, or you may just have a certain number of attacks each month and it's pretty consistent. Now you might be wondering, why is this called migraine? Where's the migraine part come in? Because it's happening in the stomach. Isn't that just a stomach ache? And that's part of the reason why it goes undiagnosed a lot, is because yes, the pain is in the stomach, but the physical part of it, what's happening behind the scenes, is migraine. It's the same neurological process that we experience with other types of migraine. And a lot of us who have other types of migraine will also experience GI effects, right? Like nausea, sometimes constipation, sometimes vomiting. So you can see how it's all kind of connected. It just depends on which symptom is your main symptom as far as what type of migraine you have. Now, I wanted to take a second and talk about something that's very similar to abdominal migraine, and that is CVS, or cyclic vomiting syndrome. Now, these are sometimes confused for one another. They can also happen together, but cyclic vomiting syndrome is kind of like it sounds. So you're going to have episodes of intense repeated vomiting, which, yes, is so fun. But with abdominal migraine, vomiting isn't the main symptom. So again, we're classifying things by what the main issue is. With cyclic vomiting syndrome, it is the vomiting, whereas abdominal migraine, it's that abdominal pain. So let's talk about who has abdominal migraine, who experiences this type of migraine attack. It is most common in kids, but yes, adults can have it too. It also tends to run in families, just like other types of migraine, but it may not necessarily be that abdominal migraine runs in your family. It could be any type of migraine that makes you more susceptible to abdominal. But often people who have it in childhood will transition out of it. And about 60 to 70% of people who have abdominal migraine as kids will unfortunately go on to develop another type of migraine as adults. Now, you might think that as far as triggers go, that they would be different for abdominal migraine versus other types, like maybe more food focused, right? But they're the same. The triggers that we look out for abdominal migraine are the same as any other type of migraine. And that's really an important thing for us all to remember. So no matter what type of migraine you have, you want to be looking at those migraine triggers. So even though abdominal migraine is more focused on the abdomen, things like lights and sounds and smells and stress and skipping meals and yes, certain foods can trigger those attacks, just like any other type of migraine. And if you're kind of relating to this and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I might have abdominal migraine, it is really important to work with your doctor and your healthcare team to rule out other things, because abdominal migraine is what's known as a diagnosis of exclusion. So you want to rule out other causes that could be more serious behind those attacks, right? So like gallbladder issues or inflammatory bowel diseases or things like that that have specific treatments. And then when those are ruled out, then your doctor might consider abdominal migraine or something like IBS, which is very frequently misdiagnosed in people who have abdominal migraine. Now, our listener today asked about different treatment strategies and research around abdominal migraine. And luckily, I have had clients, adult clients, with abdominal migraine. So I've got some stuff to share with you. We're going to be talking a lot about the gut-brain connection, as you can imagine, because that is huge when it comes to all types of migraine, but especially abdominal migraine. Now, the big connector between the brain and the gut is our vagus nerve. This is how the brain and the gut communicate with one another. If there is any sort of dysregulation or malfunctioning of this vagus nerve, that can be a big issue for people with abdominal migraine because it's directly messing with that gut-brain connection. There are ways you can support vagus nerve functioning, and luckily they're pretty easy to do. Some of them are humming, singing, chanting, deep breathing, and you can also use devices like gamma core to directly stimulate the vagus nerve as it passes through your neck. Doing this on a regular basis and acutely for attacks can help over time with improving your migraine frequency and severity, especially for abdominal migraine. Another part of the gut-brain connection that people with abdominal migraine need to be thinking about is your microbiome, your gut microbiome, the population of bacteria and other microbes that live in your intestines. Now, any imbalances within the microbiome, whether it's too much bad bacteria, not enough good bacteria, the wrong types of bacteria, etc., it can mess with that gut-brain connection because these bacteria produce chemicals that help the gut communicate with the brain, like serotonin and cytokines and LPS. That's a whole nother episode. But we know that these imbalances within the microbiome are more common in people with migraine, and they can aggravate and trigger migraine attacks. And because abdominal migraine is so strongly linked with the gut-brain connection, we want to make sure that we are thinking about our microbiome and supporting our microbiome. Now, there are some simple ways that you can support the good bacteria in your microbiome. One of them is by adding fiber to your diet because fiber feeds the good bacteria. And you can also play around with adding fermented foods to your diet. So sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, yogurt, because those contain probiotics. So it's kind of like taking a supplement, but you're getting the synergistic benefits of getting them from a whole food. Another major trigger and factor in abdominal migraine control is stress. And again, this is an issue for all of us with migraine, but it plays an even more significant role in abdominal migraine, again, because of that gut-brain connection. For instance, when the body is stuck in fight or flight mode, so you're constantly stressed, you're anxious, you're wound up, you're stuck in that sympathetic nervous system, that means that we're going to have a lot of trouble digesting our food. And our gut-brain connection is not really going to be flowing as it should because your body's focused on keeping you alive. We need to be able to switch into rest and digest mode, or the parasympathetic nervous system, to be able to digest our food and for our gut-brain connection to work effectively. So you want to support the nervous system and make sure that you're not living in fight or flight mode, because it's going to make your abdominal migraine more difficult to manage. Now, you already know a lot of things that you can do to manage stress, probably like meditation and mindfulness and breathing exercises. But one thing you may not have tried before is doing these tasks at mealtime, especially if you're dealing with abdominal migraine and you feel like it gets worse after certain meals or certain types of food. Making sure that you're taking a few deep breaths before you start eating, releasing any tension in your body, thinking about how grateful you are for that food you're about to eat, how yummy it's going to be, how it's going to give you energy. Those things can actually make a big difference for how effectively we digest our food. So just taking a few minutes to do that can really help with abdominal migraine. And of course, there are medical options as well to help you manage abdominal migraine, especially if you're really struggling. So that's something to chat over with your doctor, because sometimes we'll even use our classic migraine medications like Topamax or triptans to help manage abdominal migraine as well. And then you can also look into antiemetics that can help with nausea if that's a big part of your episodes. So to wrap things up for you today, abdominal migraine is a very real thing, and yes, it can happen in adults, but it's very commonly overlooked. If you suspect you have abdominal migraine as an adult, make sure you're chatting with your doctor about it, especially now that you know a little bit more about the condition and have some context for that conversation. And remember, the gut-brain connection and gut health in general are big factors in abdominal migraine. So regardless of whether or not you know for sure if what you're dealing with is abdominal migraine, it's a good idea to support the gut-brain connection anyway, because it's going to be beneficial for whatever is going on inside your gut. Well, that wraps up our episode today, all about abdominal migraine. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have a question that you want me to answer on our next episode, you can submit that at the link in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, leave a review, subscribe, follow, share it with others, and all that good stuff. And if you'd like to support the show while also getting access to extra episodes and bonus content, you can join the Patreon, also using the link below. If you feel this type of content is especially helpful for you and it really resonates, you can dig deeper into this kind of stuff inside my Raise Your Threshold program, and I'm there to support you along the way. So if you want to chat more about what working together would look like, you can DM me on Instagram at the.migraine.dietitian, or you can check out more information at the link below. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week on our next episode. Bye.